Hey everybody, in this video we're going to be showing you how to paint Necrons of the Nihilakh Dynasty for Warhammer 40,000 by Games Workshop. Now if you're looking to collect a Necron army and you want to make it a little bit brighter than normal, then this is certainly a colour scheme you should consider because it's got a lovely teal and gold scheme to it. And as you add more elite troops, you do more of these colours to make them really stand out. For our video we're going to be focusing on a Necron warrior, but we are going to cover all the techniques that you need to know to paint all the different troop types in the army. So I hope you enjoy it and we'll see you at the desk. To paint your Necrons in the colours of the Nihilakh Dynasty, the first thing that you need to do is to undercoat them with a silver spray. And that's exactly what I've done here using Leadbelcher from Citadel. And this is going to form the starting point for all the colours on the miniature. And even for elite troops, because those would have a lot more gold and blue on them, it's still a good idea to start here because this allows you to paint all the internal components of their skeletons. So it's a great starting point. And what we're going to do is begin by washing this to give some definition on it. Now to do this I'm actually going to use a contrast paint from Citadel and I'm using Basilicanum Grey, and this is going to form a very similar function to what a black wash would do, so Norn Oil for example. But the reason why I'm using a contrast paint for this in particular is because it'll dry a little bit smoother on flat panels. So if you're doing lots of Necron warriors and you want lots of the silver showing through, this will give a nicer finish in those areas than what the wash would. It's not a massive difference, so you can certainly use a black wash if you want to, but in this case this is just going to give a slightly nicer result. So to apply it, what you need is a large brush, and I'm going to be using a monster brush here from the Army Painter. And all you've got to do to start out is just get some of this onto your palette. So just build up a little puddle like this. And you could go straight from the pot if you wanted to. I prefer to use a palette though because it gives me a little bit more control over it. And you don't need to thin it down with any water or anything. Instead just load up on your brush and, well, remember with contrast paints, it's like colouring in. So pick a starting point in the miniature, so for example a foot, just start applying it over it like that and then work your way across the miniature, just making sure it doesn't collect too much in any one area in particular. Just let it settle as it will so you start to get that definition in the recesses. Once you've painted this all over the miniature, give it around about half an hour to dry and then we'll move on to highlighting the silver. The contrast paint is now completely dry and you can see it's given a really nice dark metal with definition in the recesses and also a nice smooth finish to it as well. Smoother than what a wash would do when we're using it on this kind of scale. And what we're going to do now is dry brush on top of this to start to bring out some of the definition a little bit more on those edges in particular. And to do this we want to do quite a controlled dry brush so you can really aim at those edges. So to do it, get hold of a smaller dry brush, and the colour to use here is Necron Compound. Now to get this ready to apply, all you've got to do is just get a small amount on the end of your bristles, so just dab it in the pot there like that. And then get some tissue and use it to work it into the brush. And we're looking to have only a very small amount of this paint on here before we start to apply it to the miniature, just to make sure it doesn't overwhelm it and give too much of a bright silver on here. So on the tissue, really work away at that paint, just testing on the texture of the tissue itself to see what kind of result you're getting. And you can see now, only a very small amount is catching that raised texture. So that's kind of what I want really. So once you get it to that sort of point there, all you've got to do is start applying it to the miniature. And rather than heavily applying this all over the model, what we're looking to do is a light flicking motion aiming at corners. So if we take a look at this arm just here, you can see there's like a corner edge going along there and on the hand. So what I'm going to do is start going that direction to catch that edge, then go backwards to catch that one. And then as I get to the hand, start working your way around like that. And this way you start to build up a lighter colour on the edge of each of these panels. So again on the shoulders, if you look at these kind of blades that you got on the shoulder here, there's an edge running along there, so go along with that one like that, and then work your way around the outer edge like this. So now it's just a matter of doing this all around the Necron warrior. With that dry brushing done, you can see we've now got a nice highlight all across the miniature. And we do have another highlight yet to do, but before we do, what we need to do is start picking out some details that are going to be a really dark metal, because these parts are also going to get highlighted with the same silver, which we'll use to highlight the rest of the body. So it makes sense to do all that at the same time, and to make it efficient, doing the black now is a great thing to do. So for this, what we need is some black Templar, and this is going to result in a very, very dark metal, so perfect for this colour scheme. And to apply it, what you should go for is a medium-sized brush, because we need to be quite controlled how we're applying this. So I'm using a regiment brush here from the Army Painter. A medium layer brush from Citadel is a great alternative. And with this, what I like to do is to add just a little bit of water to it on the palette, just to make it a little bit weaker than it is straight out the pot. This is a very strong colour, this one. And to apply it, just make sure your brush isn't overloaded. So use the tissue as you need to, just to get rid of any excess paint like that. And with this, what we're looking to do is to pick out any parts that we want to be a really dark metal. Now this is primarily going to be the casing of the Gorse Flayer. So for example, we're looking at areas such as this, and you can see straight away just how dark a metal that gives. But all you do is just work your way around this casing like this, avoiding those coils there, just going all the way around to the handle like that. And when you get towards the barrel here, that kind of energy part there, just leave that silver and paint the bracket going underneath it. So along there, all the way up to that axe blade there, like that. Now, in addition, keep an eye out for any kind of coiled cables and paint those too. A lot of them are sort of hidden away in the sort of chest cavity along here, so I want to paint those parts. But you can see there's one in the gun as well, this one just along here. So now it's just a matter of looking for all these details and just gently picking them out. With that dark metal now blocked in, we can return to the highlighting, and for this what we need is a bright silver. So this is going to be some Stormhost Silver, and to apply it, go for a finer brush. So I'm going to use a small airbrush from Citadel for it. And with this, what we're looking to do is a kind of selective edge highlight on the silver of the body and also that dark metal as well. We don't need to do everything, but what we're looking to do is just to emphasize the parts that stand out more, because that dry brush we did earlier has already given an initial highlight onto everything. So this is really just a second very fine highlight just to give that sharpness to finish it. Now to do it, just make sure the paint's thin nicely on your palette, and as always, just test it on there just to make sure it's flowing easily from your brush, and get rid of the excess too, so that there's not much on there. And with this, what we need to do is to look for any parts that really stand out as edges and just gently use the side of the brush to pick them out. So for example, if we look at the leg going down here, you can see we've got these brighter silver parts along the edges of the leg pieces there. So all I'm going to do, using the side of my brush, is just skim along those parts very quickly like that, just to give that sharper line, just to finish that off. Same on the hip, just going along there like that. And this is quite prominent down here too, and the same on this side. And throughout all of this, it's just a good idea just to rotate the model as you need to be able to access those edges. So for example, this one down here, just turn the model like that means I can get those parts there like that. Now in addition, we need to do this on the darker metal on the gun casings. That's going to be along here. So once again, just angle it so you're comfortable and just very gently skim along those parts. So very lightly there like that, just help them stand out a bit more. Now the only areas you don't need to worry about are any parts that are going to be a different colour, so blue or gold for example. And in the case of this warrior, I'm going to be doing the faceplate and the shoulders and the ankle and the chest in there a different colour, so I'm not going to worry about highlighting those. If you're doing more elite troops like Immortals though, you might want to have the entire rib cage be a different colour, such as gold for example, in which case you don't need to worry about highlighting that. So for this point, just look for any details that are going to be silver or dark metal and just use this just to give that sharpness just to finish these areas off. And there we are, all that silver detail is now highlighted, and now we can move on to adding a splash of colour to the miniature, because now it's time to put on those distinctive Nihilakh colours on the model. Now this is going to be gold and blue, and remember there's no hard or fast rule as to how much you need to do here, but generally the higher the rank of the Necron, the more of this you should do. So in the case of the warrior just here, we're not going to do all that much, but if you're doing something like an overlord, then you'll want to paint most of the model using these two colours. But what we need is some Retributor Armour for the gold detail, and then for the blue, we need some Ahriman Blue. So first of all then, with Retributor Armour, I'm going to be applying this still using that small airbrush because I want lots of control over where I'm exactly placing this. And for this colour, I'm just going to stick to the faceplate for now, but you'll see we're going to play around with it a little bit later on. But for this, all you've got to do is make sure it's nicely thinned down with that touch of water as ever. So there we go. And then using this, it's just a matter of painting the part that you want to be gold. And like I said, in our case, it's going to be the faceplate, so I'm looking at painting it onto this area just here. Once you've picked out all those parts that are largely going to be gold, you're then ready to move on to the blue details using Ahriman Blue. And now I've switched to a regiment brush for a slightly larger brush for a slightly larger area. And for this, I'm going to be using the shoulder plates for the blue, so these areas here, and also the ankle and the chest down here as well. Once you have an even base coat of those two colours and those details, the next thing to do is to apply a wash over them to give them some definition. And for this, what you need is a dark brown wash, so I'm going to use some Agrax Earthshade. Now to apply it, go for that medium-sized brush once more, and I'm using my regiment brush again for this. And with this, what we need to do is make sure that we apply it carefully to only get it over these new colours. So definitely use a palette to help control how much you're putting on at once, just by making sure your brush isn't overloaded. Once you're ready, all you've got to do is start painting this over the gold and over the blue, so it settles mostly in the recessed detail, but as you can see, by applying it all over, it just gives a nice bit of definition to these details. Once the wash is completely dry, we're then ready to move on to the next step, which is to do a little bit of layering on these colours and also adding a little bit of a pattern as well. So for doing this, what we need to do is return to Ahriman Blue and then Retributor Armour. Now I'm going to be starting out with Ahriman Blue, and again I'm going to stick to that regiment brush for this. And with this, what we're looking to do primarily is to layer the blue details, because the wash has made them a little bit dark. It's given a slightly green tint to them, which is perfect for the teal colour, but there's a little bit too murky at the moment for what we need. So For this, you just need to get a small amount of that ready, and using this, we just need to paint it onto the flatter areas that are blue. So on the shoulder pads, it's a great example just here. You can see we've got this flat area. All you need to do is apply a thin coat of this onto these areas like this, just to brighten that up along those areas. But when you get to recesses, such as the little curve that we've got near the spine, just leave that darker, then carry on again on the other side to retain that definition from that area. Now, in addition, with this colour, what you can do is start doing some patterns on gold details if you want to. And this is entirely optional, but it's actually a very useful way of denoting squads and things. And all you need to do is do some stripes. That's what I'm going to do on the forehead just here. To do it, for a bit of freehanding, all you do is just angle the model so you're looking straight at it and looking straight down the brush, and do a downward motion like this, and just gradually build it up on the forehead there like that to get a blue stripe there like that. Once you're happy with that layer on the blue and any stripes, you can then move on to Retributor Armour. And to begin with this, once again, we need to layer on any larger areas of gold, just like with the blue. And this is also a great opportunity to neaten up any details such as the stripes should you need to. But you can see once again, what I'm looking to do is to paint this onto the flat areas and avoid the recesses, just the eye socket just there and the mouth around there too. And using this, we can also pick out the raised detail of the ankh on the chest. So just use the side of the brush and just very carefully approach this raised area, just skimming along like that so the colour only catches that raised detail. There we go. And in addition, if you want to, you can add some more stripes onto the blue areas. And that's what we're going to do on the shoulders just here. Once again, a stripe on either side, just like before, just painted downward like that, following the edge along there. Once you finish the layering and you're happy with those stripes, you're then ready to move on to highlighting these two areas of colour. And to do this, we just need two colours. First of all, for the teal, what we'll need is some Templar Blue, and then for the gold, some Liberator Gold. But first of all, we're going to be using Templar Blue, and for this, I've returned to that small layer brush. And with this, what we're looking to do is a highlight very much like what we were doing with that silver earlier on. So an edge highlight, but picking out the areas that stand out the most. So once you've got the paint thinned down and so it's flowing easily from your brush, all you've got to do is look for those edges, which on these details are very easy to access. Because all you've got to do is use the side of your brush and just skim along those sharper areas. So for example, just along there like that, and along here as well, and then just turn the model as you need to be able to access the different areas. And there we are with that blue highlighted. We can now move on to highlighting the gold using the same technique, this time with Liberator Gold. Again, just gently using the side of your brush just to look for all those edges on the gold details and just gently pick them out. And with that, the blue and the gold is now complete, and our warrior looks like he belongs to the Nihilakh Dynasty. But there are still those green details to paint in on the miniature, so we're going to do those now. Starting with green cables, and for this what we need is some Caliban Green to be the base coat, followed by a layer of Warpstone Glow, and then a fine highlight of Moot Green to finish them off. But first of all, we need that base coat of Caliban Green, and to apply this I've gone back to my regiment brush, and with this all you got to do is block in these areas. So just get some ready on your palette, and once you've done so, you're then looking for any smooth cables. So for example, this one here on the side of the Gorse Flare. Next up, we're ready for our first highlight using Warpstone Glow, and for this switch to a smaller brush, and I've got a small airbrush here from Citadel, and with this just angle the model to about this point here, and using the side of your brush just gently start painting a line of this colour running along the cable. So just running up to about there, and then skimming along unto about there, like that. And finally, we just need a small amount of Moot Green to finish these details off. And for this, for the cable, first of all, just apply a very small amount towards this bottom part of it, just here where the green is going to be the brightest. Apply just like before, so there we go, like that. If you have any other cables hanging, just apply a small amount of this towards the end of them, so just there, for example, like that. Now, in addition with this colour, what we can do is paint in the eyes at this stage, and to do this, just really brace the model in your hands like this. Just very slowly approach it from the side, and just dot the raised area in the middle, like that. And with that, those dark green cables are now complete, and we can move on to painting in the brighter green areas. And to ensure a really bright finish here, what we need to do first of all is block out these areas of the bright white. And so for this, what I'm going to use is some matte white from the Army Painter, which is a great paint for this kind of thing and one I definitely recommend. Now to apply it, go for a smaller brush once again, and I'm using my small airbrush here. And you can see I've got it on some of this black paint here on the palette, so you can see what we're going to do with this. And we've got a little dollop of it there like that. And what we're going to do is just get a very heavily watered down version of this colour. So just get a lot of water and really run it in there like that, so it's almost creating a wash. And with this, what we're going to do is 2 stages really on painting in the orbs that appear on the Gorse Flayer. The first coat, just make sure you got that really runny white paint, and using this, what we need to do is run it into the recesses of these designs we've got running along here. So for example, if we start on this orb just here, all I'm going to do is just let the paint run into the recess all around the orb there like that, and then just bring it around those narrower channels on the side, so there, and this one as well, into that next orb. Now once this is completely dry, all you do is just get some more of that matte white, not thin down quite so much, and for that second stage just paint it over the orb there so you get a bright white there too. Now in addition, have a look on your Necron on the cables to see if there's any split parts where the inner cable is showing. So for example this one just here, if that's the case, paint this inner cable white as well, because this needs to be a bright green too. Once you've got that solid white, the next thing to do is to add the hint of a greenish glow to it. And to do this, we're going to use some wash, but we're going to actually create the colour by mixing 2 together. What you need is some Biel-tan Green and some Casandora Yellow. And on the palette, what you need to do is make a roughly 50-50 mix of these. So using that small airbrush, I'm going to start out with some Biel-tan Green. You just need to get a little puddle of it there like that. And then we need some Casandora Yellow. And remember, just make sure you wash your brush so you don't contaminate it with any colour. But we're looking for a roughly equal amount. I'm going to put them next to each other on the palette, because if you have it like this, what you can do is start bringing them together and adjust the colour to the point that you want. And what we're looking for is something kind of like that, you see. So I had slightly more yellow than green in there. So roughly that sort of colour. Once done that, it's just a matter of loading up some of this and then painting it directly over those white details. So on the Gorse Flayer, for example, all I'm going to do is just run it over those parts, just letting it settle in those recesses to get that greenish glow there like that. Really simple to do. Now in addition, be sure to paint this mix onto any exposed wires, for example the one just there, and you can also run it into the eye sockets as well if you want to give the hint of a green glow in those areas. Once the wash is dry, all we need to do is to highlight these details to finish the model off, and for this we just need 2 colours. First of all, some moon dust from the army painter, and then we're going to return to that matte white. But first of all, what we need is moon dust, and I've already got a little dollop of it here on my palette, and to apply it I'm using that small airbrush once again. And with this, all you need to do is just get a small amount of this nicely thinned down with that touch of water. So there we go, like that. And using this, what we need to do is start picking out the raised areas on that Gorse Flayer, so these orbs that run along the side of it. All you do is just paint a small amount of this towards the middle of each one, so just along there to neaten it up, make it a little bit more yellow there like that. Now in addition, those exposed cables, what we need to do is just paint a little bit of that onto these, so just a small amount, just like that highlight that we did on the darker green areas. And finally with this, just do a very small dot in the middle of each eye. And finally, all we need is a very small amount of matte white to finish this glow off. And for this, again, using that small airbrush, just do a little dot in the middle of each of these orbs. So just gently running along there like that to give the brightest point in the very middle of each one. And for those cables, well, for these, all you got to do is apply a very small amount onto the end. Now with this done, your miniature is ready to be based. And as ever, it's entirely up to you how you base it. But for me, I'm going to go for a Tomb World base. And here we have the completed Nihilakh Necron warrior, ready to defend the territory of his dynasty. So as you've seen, painting these miniatures in this colour scheme is very straightforward, but the key thing to remember is, as you start painting more elite troops and working your way up through the ranks, start to introduce more of that teal and gold into them to make them stand out a little bit more. Especially by the time you get to things like overlords, in which case that teal and gold is going to form the vast majority of the colour scheme on them. Anyway, have fun painting your Necrons, and we'll see you all again very soon.